A very good evening to you from Mission Control Houston, and welcome to our live coverage of the Soyuz landing here on NASA TV. It all comes down to this as the one-year crew members Scott Kelly and Mikhail Kornienko just 1 hour, 10 minutes away from touchdown in Kazakhstan after a historic 340 days in space on their first one-year mission on board the International Space Station. Right now, the pair are inside the Soyuz TMA-18M spacecraft along with Russian cosmonaut Sergei Volkov on their way towards a deorbit burn just under 17 minutes from now, which will kick off the final phases of re-entry, parachute opening, and landing, bringing these three space flyers back home on Earth down in Kazakhstan. The deorbit burn, which is scheduled to take place at 9:32 p.m. Central Time, 10:32 p.m. Eastern, will last for 4 minutes, 49 seconds in duration, slowing the Soyuz craft down and allowing it to begin its descent through the upper parts of the Earth's atmosphere. At that point, it'll be some 12 kilometers away from the International Space Station, where it undocked from not too long ago, a little bit earlier this evening at 7:02 p.m. Central Time. Again, that undocking, again, taking place at 7:02 p.m. Central, 8:02 p.m. Eastern. The Soyuz spacecraft undocking from the Poisk module on the space-facing side of the Russian segment on the International Space Station. It initially backed away at a slow pace of just 1/10 of a meter per second after the hooks and latches that had been holding this craft in place for the last 181 days released, and the vehicle was able to back away. Following that successful undocking, which occurred while the station was flying just over the eastern part of Mongolia, the vehicle executed its two separation burns successfully once it was about 50 some odd feet away from the International Space Station. Inside the craft, Sergei Volkov in the center seat as the commander of the vehicle throughout all of tonight's events. To his left, Mikhail Kornienko in the board engineer seat, and Scott Kelly riding shotgun in the right seat throughout the night's activities. And again, the next major task, which is less than 15 minutes away now, is going to be that deorbit burn. Just to walk you through what to expect over the next hour and 7.5 minutes until touchdown. We'll start off with the deorbit burn, which again will be a 4-minute, 49-second firing of engines on board the Soyuz craft designed to slow it down and begin that descent. Then at 9:59 p.m. Central Time, so just about 27 minutes after the deorbit burn, the spacecraft will separate, the various modules separating off. And this animation will walk you through, starts off with that deorbit burn, which occurs while the station's, or the Soyuz rather, is at an altitude of about 260 statute miles. The separation occurs, the orbital module on top and the propulsion and service module on the bottom fall away and burn up in the Earth's atmosphere, whereas the descent module begins the flight through the Earth's atmosphere. Entry interface comes 62 miles off the ground. The Kármán line, the boundary between Earth and outer space, all setting up for that eventual chute open. The first command to open the parachutes on the vehicle will come at an altitude of 6.6 miles at around 10:10 p.m. Central Time. First the drogue chute released, and then the main parachute, which is designed to slow the Soyuz to a descent rate of 7.2 meters per second. Just about 1.5 meters off the ground, the soft landing engines fire, just to give it a little extra cushion to the vehicle before it touches down in Kazakhstan, with that landing scheduled to come at 10:25 p.m. Central, 11:25 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be landing to the southeast of a town called Zhezkazgan in central Kazakhstan. At this point, the search and recovery forces mobilizing, getting ready to send the various vehicles out, mainly those search and recovery helicopters, Russian Mi-8 helicopters, which will carry personnel directly to the landing zone. A series of ATVs also already making their way out to the anticipated landing site. And once all of those aircraft and vehicles are there on the ground, they'll be able to begin taking the crew members out of the vehicle, safing the vehicle, as well as setting up a medical tent and getting the crew members out, doing initial medical checks, and then actually beginning some more science right when the crew gets back down to the ground. One of the important things to remember with the one-year mission is the science does not stop just because they've left the International Space Station. In fact, all 3 crew members participating in something called the field tests, anticipated to take place right after they're out of the capsule. So once they're in the medical tent, all 3 will go through a series of tasks designed to study and evaluate their capabilities shortly after being reintroduced into a 1G, a gravity environment, having them do simple things such as remaining standing, walking around simple obstacles, even lying down on the ground and recovering as if they had fell. All of this designed to better understand how we can expect crew members to react and function after being in microgravity for such a long period of time. Obviously not too big of an issue as we have search and recovery forces here on Earth, but when we send explorers to far-off destinations like Mars, they will be their own search and recovery forces, so it will be on them to save their vehicles, do any number of things. So using these International Space Station crew members as an analog, if you will, we can understand what we can ask of our crew members when they do first take those steps on the red planet just minutes after touchdown. So the science continuing moments after they take their first steps here on planet Earth, and continuing over the next several months for Scott Kelly and Mikhail Kornienko. You can be sure to follow the one-year mission on social media and on the web here at a variety of sites. The main home, nasa.gov/1year. And Scott Kelly been very active across all of his platforms, across social media, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And of course, if you want to join in the conversation this evening on Twitter, be sure to use the hashtag #YearInSpace. Getting a quick look inside of the Russian mission control room in Koryov, just outside of Moscow. They've been responsible for interacting with the Soyuz craft during its departure and descent, upcoming soon through the Earth's atmosphere. We're under 10 minutes away from the planned start of that deorbit burn. Again, targeted to come at 9:32 p.m. Central, 10:32 p.m. Eastern. That deorbit burn comes about 2.5 hours following undocking. It's a fairly short day for the crew in terms of the actual procedures in the vehicle, just under 3.5 hours from undocking from the station to actually landing back down on Earth. A much shorter time than it takes to necessarily launch and arrive at the station, which is anywhere from 6 hours to 2 days. However, the crew members waking up earlier this morning, doing all of their final preparation to pack into the Soyuz vehicle. Scott Kelly taking a number of samples, final data takes for a variety of the studies that he's involved in. And again, a lot of that science going to continue once they're back down on the ground. Kelly and Kornienko were on board the International Space Station from March 27th, 2015 until today. And their touchdown will wrap up over 340 days in space. And that is the longest mission ever, longest single mission in the history of the International Space Station. However, there were 4 individuals who have spent more time in space on a single mission, and they were all on the Russian Mir space station, the longest of those, Valery Polyakov, who spent 438 consecutive days. That's the all-time record back between January of 1994 and March of 1995.
10, 6, 20.
But this, of course, was the longest on board the International Space Station and the most studied, the most in-depth study that we've done on crew members spending this length of time in outer space, taking advantage of all of the advancements in medical technology to gather as much accurate and new data on these crew members as possible as we continue to refine our knowledge of what happens to the human body while it's in microgravity. This first one-year mission just pushing the envelope on how long we've kept crew members in space as we continue to look forward to sending humans in the decades to come to far-off destinations like Mars. Those missions expected to last in excess of 30 months. So obviously understanding everything before we send those crew members, very important, and using the International Space Station as that test bed just a few hundred miles over our head, a very important piece to solving that puzzle. Under 7 minutes away now from the deorbit burn. Once the deorbit burn is complete, things will begin to pick up with the separation of the modules coming just close to the top of the hour. But that deorbit burn will be the next major milestone in the return. We should hopefully get video from ground teams at the landing zone close to the touchdown. Landing weather cooperating quite well, especially for March, which can be a very dynamic time weather-wise out in Kazakhstan. You can get another look at our landing map here just to the southeast of Zhezkazgan. Maybe a bit of snow on the ground, but it's well south of the very heavy snow in the country right now. A few broken clouds, scattered clouds in the area should give the search and recovery forces very good visibility to hopefully get to the capsule as quickly as possible and hopefully give us some good views from the landing zone as the one-year crew members get taken out, get their first breaths of fresh air since March of last year, and then get to take their first steps back down on planet Earth in 340 days. So this again a view inside of the Russian Mission Control Center. They've been taking the lead on working with the Soyuz crew throughout their descent this evening. Meanwhile, the team here in Houston continuing to monitor and follow along, working with their counterparts in Russia to safe the International Space Station in advance of that undocking, which came a few hours ago at 7:02 p.m. Central Time. Judd Freeling, the flight director, leading the team inside the room today. And Reed Wiseman there, who knows a thing or two about landing in the Soyuz as he did just back in fall of 2014, is the Capcom for today. He's going to be serving as the link between our teams here and the crew still on board the International Space Station.
If not, just keep talking. Copy. Also, even if we don't have dual cam, keep reporting on the descent. We will have Russian ground side come supposed to at the time at the maximum load. So please keep talking. That will be the condition of the descent and your condition. All copy.
And once again,
3 minutes away now from the start of that deorbit burn. Again, that will last for 4 minutes, 49 seconds. taking place when the Soyuz is at a distance of about 12 kilometers from the International Space Station. That burn designed to slow the vehicle down by several hundred miles an hour until it can begin descending through the upper parts of the Earth's atmosphere. That'll be the event which kicks off the rest of the activities, ultimately culminating in a landing just 55 minutes from now.
Eridani, do you copy me well? Yes, pretty well. We copy.
Now under 2 minutes and counting to start of deorbit burn.
Six 3142. We copy you on space to ground. We are standing by for the SKD cover opening. We copy, and we copy you loud and clear. We see the LED indicator, and I push the transmit button. That is correct.
And we are 30 seconds and counting from the anticipated start of the Soyuz deorbit burn.
Activation. And we are in the monitoring, the readiness mode. Do you have J3 indicator illuminated? Yes, it is illuminated. We confirm that at 6:32:40, the thrusters have fired, or 6:32, 0.46 is the delta V and 0.2.
And so the deorbit burn beginning at 9:32 p.m. Central.
13.6. And the acceleration is 0.5. We are moving to page 106. 21 meters, 0.45, and the pressure at the nozzles is 0. 1 minute, 27.2, and delta V is 0.45. Copy.
Минута
1 minute 15,
5,
35, and delta V is 0.46. We copy.
So again, at this point, the deorbit burn underway. The Soyuz TMA-18M spacecraft. The burn 4 minutes 49 seconds in planned duration.
0.46. Copy. And the pressure at the nozzles is nominal. 1 minute 45, and delta V is 0.46. We copy.
Минуты 54.4. Ускорение.
54.4 in 2 minutes, and delta V is 0.46.
2:15, 61.
2:15, 61.2.
Two and a half minutes so far into the deorbit burn. The visiting vehicle officer reporting the telemetry. Everything looks good. Everything continuing to function as expected with the Soyuz vehicle's thrusters for this 4-minute, 49-second burn. Again, this designed to slow the vehicle down so it can, its orbit will eventually take it through the Earth's atmosphere, setting it up for that descent. We're now under 50 minutes away from anticipated landing in Kazakhstan.
3 minutes. 82.1. Delta V is 0.47. 3 minutes 15. 89.0. Delta V is 0.47. We copy. 3 minutes 30, 96.6. Delta V is 0.47. 3:45, 103.6, and delta V is 0.47. We copy.
4 минуты, 110.2.
4 minutes.
Ускорение 0,40.
110.2 and 0.47 is delta V.
4 minutes, 15 seconds into the burn.
4 minutes 50.
Everything continuing to go as expected with this maneuver.
And delta V is 0.47. Copy. 4:30. 124.3, and we're standing by for the GECA command. We confirm that the GECA command has gone through. KSD BO is open. We confirm separation and thermal sensors are activated.
And the visiting vehicle officer here in Mission Control Houston reporting the burn complete.
Okay, the the main command, GECA, has gone through successfully, and thermal sensors are activated.
So again, the visiting vehicle officer here in Houston reporting the burn complete. The maneuver done successfully. That kicking off the rest of the evening's events. So with that burn occurring over the southern part of the Atlantic Ocean, the Soyuz's orbit now tailored to begin its descent once it's over Kazakhstan territory. Everything's setting up for that landing just under 47 minutes from now at 10:25 p.m. Central, 11:25 p.m. Eastern.
We copied all your reports. So the burn was 1-2 inaudible. Moscow, you do not copy us? I copy. 128 is a burn. 128.1. I'm working for page 110. Eridane, we copy all. We copy all the information and your reports. Do you copy, Georgi? As far as we understand, Georgi, you're still copying us, so I will continue reporting. That is correct. That is correct, Sergei.
And so you're continuing to hear calls from the Soyuz commander, Sergei Volkov, reporting the burn done successfully. So the 128 you're hearing is the delta V, the change in velocity of that burn, 128 meters per second, or about 286 miles per hour. That's the slow down value that the Soyuz just went under. All of that designed again to change the orbital mechanics of the vehicle, setting it up for that landing. So the deorbit burn being executed right down the line, everything going as expected with it. So with that deorbit burn complete and in the books, the next thing to look forward to is the separation of the modules of the Soyuz craft itself, that coming about 27 minutes after the deorbit burn. Once that occurs, the descent module, which is the only piece designed to re-enter through the Earth's atmosphere successfully, will begin entry interface, all of that setting up for the eventual parachute opening. At that point, the capsule will be at about 6.6 miles in altitude, or a little over 35,000 feet. The drogue chute will first open, followed by the main parachute, which is designed to slow the vehicle down to about 7.2 meters per second. Right before landing, the soft landing engines fire, making the landing as soft as possible down there on the Kazakh steppe. All of this setting up for our landing tonight, 10:25 p.m. Central Time, 11:25 p.m. Eastern, just under 44 minutes away. And again, for the crew members on board, for Scott Kelly, the NASA astronaut, and Mikhail Kornienko, his fellow one-year crew member from Roscosmos, this is wrapping up 340 days in space. The pair have been on board since they launched in March of 2015, arriving at the station on March 27th. They'll have logged these 340 days consecutively in space. For Scott Kelly, he'll have totaled 520 days in space across 4 flights, being a veteran of 2 space shuttle missions, as well as one previous long-duration mission on board the International Space Station. For Kornienko, this will total 516 days for him, having previously spent time on a long-duration mission on board the station. For Sergei Volkov, who arrived at the station in September of 2015, he'll have spent 182 days in space across increments 45 and 46, and he'll have a total of 548 days across 3 flights, 3 long-duration flights on board the International Space Station. All told, though, Kelly and Kornienko have orbited the Earth roughly 5,440 times, giving them a total distance traveled of about 143 million miles around our planet. So a great deal of distance, a great deal of time spent for these two intrepid explorers on board humanity's home in low Earth orbit, on board the International Space Station, conducting a lot of very vital research in a variety of disciplines, but none more so important for their mission than the human research being done on board, as we continue to prepare our future explorers, continue to prepare our scientists, everybody who will be responsible for designing these missions to places like Mars, using the International Space Station as that tool to learn.
Really poorly. It's the first time I'm actually copying you. We copy, and we hear you 5 by 5.
At this point on the ground in Kazakhstan, a lot of the helicopters taking flight from the airport in Zhezkazgan. It's a short flight for them to the landing zone. Once they arrive there, they will circle in a racetrack pattern around the expected landing site, waiting for view of the capsule and waiting for confirmation of landing before they move in. The helicopters carrying personnel, flight doctors, other support staff to help safe the vehicle once it's on the ground there on the Kazakh steppe. They'll be joined by search and recovery force teams in ATV, all-terrain vehicles. Once there, they'll safe the vehicle and begin extracting the crew members. Temperatures hovering right below freezing out there, so it'll definitely be a brisk homecoming for these crew members, getting their first breath of air for Kornienko and Kelly, though, it'll be roughly the same weather that they left in, so a nice jog to the memory. Once the crew members are safely out of the spacecraft, a medical tent, if it's erected, will be set up for the crew members to be transferred to, where they'll do all of their initial medical checkouts, as well as the field test study, with all 3 crew members engaged in that immediately after returning. And then following all of those successful tests, they'll be loaded into helicopters flown back to Jezkazgan. And once there, have a brief welcome ceremony before it's time to say farewell for all of these crew members. Volkov and Kornienko bound back for their home base and at the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center in Star City, Russia. Scott Kelly, though, bound back here to the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, and he's scheduled to get back here late Wednesday night, March 2nd, where he will have a homecoming, be reunited with friends and family, and all of the folks that have supported his mission throughout the year. So we're under 40 minutes and counting from the landing. Again, the next major thing on the timeline will be the separation of those modules. That's scheduled to come at 9:59 p.m. Central, 10:59 p.m. Eastern. Again, all 3 modules will separate, allowing the descent module with the crew members on board to begin descending through the Earth's atmosphere. That occurs at an altitude of roughly 86.8 miles, or 458,000 feet over the Earth's surface. Here you can see just a quick timeline. The entry, that atmosphere line at about 62 miles or 100 kilometers. Begins what's known as atmospheric entry. Following that, the vehicle enters into what's known as the plasma phase, where the intense heat of reentry that builds up around the vehicle forms a plasma that can sometimes knock out communications, generally knocks out communications with the capsule until they reestablish with the search and recovery forces. And then they'll exit from the plasma after about 5 minutes, also entering their period of maximum G-force loads. The crew members typically experiencing about 4 to 5 Gs, so 4 to 5 times Earth's gravity during a nominal or normal descent in a Soyuz vehicle. They'll exit from that plasma at an altitude of about 104,000 feet, and then continue falling for just about a minute and a half before the command to open the chutes is given, that coming when the vehicle's about 35,000 feet in altitude. Pilot parachutes are first deployed, the second of which extracts the drogue chute. That drogue chute, which measures about 24 square meters, slows the Soyuz down to an initial descent rate of about 80 meters per second, down from 230 meters per second, so still moving quite quickly. Then the main parachutes release, the massive main parachute, which covers an area of about 1,000 meters, and is responsible for slowing the Soyuz down to a descent rate of about 7.2 meters per second. It also allows the vehicle to descend at a slight angle just to dispel some extra heat before shifting over to a vertical descent, those soft landing engines firing just about 1.5 meters over the ground, or rather just about 0.8 meters off the ground. A little jolt for the astronauts, but designed just to do that final slowing to a descent rate of just 1.5 meters per second. Again, all of this setting up for a touchdown at 10:25 p.m. Central, 11:25 p.m. Eastern, just about 36.5 minutes from now.
Переданный, как слышите ЦУП Москвы?
Eridani, MCC Moscow, how do you copy us?
So we're just a little under 10 minutes away now from the separation of the modules. Two of the three modules on the Soyuz will separate off and eventually burn up in the Earth's atmosphere, allowing the descent module to fly freely down through with the crew members on board. And right now, just 35 minutes away from the anticipated landing time in Kazakhstan for these crew members. Kelly and Kornienko wrapping up 340 days in space. Sergei Volkov right at around 182. Obviously been a very busy year for the one-year crew members, Scott Kelly of NASA and Mikhail Kornienko of Roscosmos. Kelly, while he was on board, over roughly 400 experiments were conducted on board the International Space Station, again in a variety of fields from material science to human research. A lot of the data from Kelly and Kornienko will be analyzed shortly after they return to Earth, but it could be anywhere from 6 months to 6 years before published results from all of the research around the one-year mission begins to be published. A number of samples from the pair will also be returned on future SpaceX Dragon spacecraft, which have the capability to return thousands of pounds of supplies back down to the Earth. Currently the only means of doing so aside from the Soyuz craft itself, which does have a small cargo complement. And again, as we detailed earlier, the science continuing mere minutes after these crew members are out of their Soyuz craft. They'll of course be brought into chairs, have a chance to acclimate themselves a bit to the weather, possibly get a small bite to eat from the teams there as they take their initial medical checks before moving the crew members over into the medical tent, which is typically set up there at the landing zone, and all three going right into what's known as the field test study, which again is a series of tasks for the crew members to execute as close as possible to being reintroduced into that gravity environment, just to evaluate their capabilities. A very important piece of knowledge for future mission planners as we continue to do a lot of work to prepare for the upcoming journey to Mars in the decades to come, sending humans out to walk and live on another planet. The mission definitely not ending once they touch down on the Kazakh steppe, and for Kelly and Kornienko continuing several months after they return, with a number of medical data takes and medical tests already planned for their return. Crew members dedicating a significant portion of their lives to advancing our knowledge for the benefit of humankind and for future explorers. A very welcome return waiting for them once they come home. But again, continuing to stand by that separation of modules coming up in just about 6 minutes from now, 31 minutes and change away from landing today in Kazakhstan.
Ariadne, MCC Moscow, how do you copy?
Передан, ответит ЦУПу Москвы. Как нас слышите?
How do you copy us?
Передан, ответит ЦУПу Москвы.
Eridani, MCC Moscow. Come in.
Module separation coming up in just about 3 minutes or so. From this point on, not uncommon for communication to get a little spotty with the vehicle as it continues to widen the gap between it and the International Space Station. And then as entry interface begins in the plasma shortly after builds up around the vehicle, communication usually enters into a blackout period with comm being reestablished by one of the circling Russian Search and Recovery Force airplanes with the vehicle following its descent through the Earth's atmosphere, usually once it's under the parachutes.
Передан, ЦУПу Москвы.
Eridani,
Ответьте,
MCC
если нас
Moscow.
слышите.
Do you copy us? Please come in if you copy us.
Передан, ответьте, если нас слышите.
Eridani, if you read us, let us know.
So just a little over a minute away from the anticipated time of the module separation. It comes about 27 minutes after that deorbit burn. The vehicle will be at an altitude of about 86 miles, some 458,000 feet. Again, the modules will separate. The descent module in the center flying free to begin its descent through the Earth's atmosphere with the crew members on board.
How do you read us?
Передан, ответит ЦУПу.
Eridani, Mission Control Moscow.
So for now, we'll stand by and Wait to see if the visiting vehicle officer gets confirmation of module separation. And getting confirmation from the visiting vehicle officer that the separation of modules has occurred. That confirmation coming right at the top of the hour at 10 p.m. Central, 11 p.m. Eastern Time.
Iridana, Mission Control Moscow.
So again, we have gotten confirmation from the visiting vehicle officer here in Houston, working in counterpart with the Russian flight controllers in Koryov, just outside of Moscow. Module separation has occurred, so the descent module now flying free from the orbital and propulsion portions of the Soyuz spacecraft. Things will begin to pick up quite a bit here. The next major milestone, entry interface, when the descent module reaches an altitude of 62 miles or 100 kilometers, begins its flight through the Earth's atmosphere. It will gradually build up heat, which will turn into plasma around the vehicle. The heat shield keeping the crew safe from the intense heat of re-entry. Now, though, 23 minutes, 45 seconds away from planned Soyuz landing in Kazakhstan. So at this point, the Soyuz craft approaching what's known as entry interface at that altitude of about 62 miles or 328,000 feet. This means the Soyuz beginning to pass through the denser parts of the Earth's atmosphere. Shortly after, it'll enter into plasma. Once it leaves the plasma, pulling the maximum G-loads on the crew, all of that, again, necessary to slow the vehicle down, so the vehicle will be able to deploy its parachutes. First the drogue chute coming out, and then the main parachute to slow the vehicle down to a manageable 7.2 meters per second. Those soft landing engines firing just before touchdown, and then all that setting up for landing still on target at 10:25 p.m. Central Time, just 21 minutes 52 seconds from now.
Inaudible.
So at this point in the timeline, the vehicle in entry interface into the plasma So entering in the plasma at an altitude of just under 50 miles or 263 feet in altitude. All of this coming roughly 4 minutes after the module separation, 34 minutes after that deorbit burn, and we're right at about 3 hours since the vehicle undocked from the International Space Station. It's expected to exit from this plasma phase at about 10:08 or 10:09 p.m. Central Time. At that point, the crew will experience its maximum G loads, G forces, 4 to 5, so about 4 to 5 times Earth's normal gravity. And at that point, they'll be in an altitude of about 19 miles, 104,000 feet. With everything continuing to go per the plan, continuing to march towards that landing just under 19 and a half minutes from now. So a little over 3 minutes and counting since the Soyuz entered into the plasma phase. That entry guidance having begun should be another minute and a half to 2 minutes from now when it exits this and the crew experiences the maximum G loads. "18 minutes and counting from touchdown." And the flight control team getting a report. All of the search and recovery helicopters have departed the airport in Zhezkazgan on their way to the landing zone. Again, all of the recovery personnel from NASA and Roscosmos on board, as well as moving to the landing zone in all-terrain vehicles. They'll be setting up in a circular pattern around the anticipated landing site, awaiting a view and confirmation of touchdown of the vehicle. And once it's there, they'll begin to descend and then set up base camp, if you will, around the vehicle so they can safe it and then begin extracting the crew members one at a time.
Iridana Mission Control Moscow. Yes, we can hear you. We read you loud and clear. 4 is overload. 5 seconds atmospheric. How are you doing? Doing okay. Feeling the pressure. Feeling the G's. Have a great landing, guys. Thank you, Georgi.
So getting good communication from the crew on board the Soyuz successfully through that plasma, feeling the pressure, feeling the maximum G loads that they've just passed through. now getting ready to descend under 100,000 feet.
2.4, getting less, 4.3,
Интеграл 19.
integral 19,
So next up will be the command to open the chutes. Should be coming shortly.
inaudible,
Так, готовимся, прием.
getting ready.
Желаем хорошей посадки.
Have a good landing. The Russian ground sites coming up.
And as you can see on the front board in this view of the Mission Control Center in Koryov, we're at the stage where the chutes, the command should have been given. We'll wait for confirmation from the visiting vehicle officer, but the vehicle should be just around 6 miles in altitude.
Самочувствие хорошее.
Feeling good?
Выполняли спуск в ауте. Интеграл плюс 19.
Integral plus 19,
Промах 0,1 без света.
miss 0.1 with no lighting.
Слышу вас тихо. Это Иридан.
You're faint. This is Iridan. The crew is doing good.
Спуск отработан правильно.
The burn was correct.
Интеграл 19.
Integral 19.
Промах 0,1 без света.
0.1 discrete is the miss.
Через минут пересадка.
Inaudible.
Слышим вас тоже хорошо. Добрый день.
We read you.
Экипажи хорошие.
The crew is doing well.
В ауте.
We are in automatic control entry.
And so at this point, the Soyuz craft descending under parachutes. All the reports from the search and recovery forces indicating a nominal Soyuz reentry, so normal reentry for the craft. It's continuing to drift down now over the next several minutes. The targeted landing coming at 11 minutes from now at 10:25 p.m. Central Time.
Interference.
Текущая высота.
And again, just 11 minutes and counting. We should hopefully get some views from down on the ground there in Kazakhstan not too long from now.
On the screen. It shows only meters.
Я тоже 38.
I have 38.
Опа. прошла. Вилли. Так, приготовьтесь.
Inaudible, get ready for landing.
And we're now just 10 minutes and counting.
А то 3 впереди. Ладушка, 2.
Breaking up.
Закончил. Открыть.
And now just 8.5 minutes and counting to that touchdown, getting reports from the field that good communication between the search and recovery forces and the crew on board have been established. The crew is feeling good, getting ready for that touchdown again just about 8 minutes from now. At this point, descending under the main parachute, which is going to slow the Soyuz to a descent rate of about 7.2 meters per second. And then just before touchdown, when they're less than a meter above the ground, 6 soft landing engines will fire to slow it down to its final descent rate.
Вращает вверх двигатель.
Tuning. Copy.
And we're under 6 minutes away now and counting from the expected landing time of the Soyuz TMA-18M spacecraft. NASA's Scott Kelly on board along with Russian cosmonauts Mikhail Kornienko and Sergei Volkov. Kelly and Kornienko wrapping up 340 days in space this evening, as they are landing on the other side of the world from us here in Houston. It'll actually be about 10:30 in the morning over in Kazakhstan.
Interference.
And we're now at 5 minutes and counting. Reports continuing to come in from the search and recovery forces who are in position. They've reported good communications with the Soyuz craft itself. The crew on board reporting they are doing well during their final descent.
Inaudible.
They'll be set up and ready to move in immediately after touchdown to begin setting up camp around the Soyuz craft, safing the vehicle, and then begin extracting the crew members one at a time.
Copy. Confirming on the screen.
Three and a half minutes and counting from the anticipated touchdown. We'll hopefully get a confirmed landing time. We're also hoping to get some video uplinks from the landing site itself as soon as possible. But again, the crew continuing to descend, everything going by the book with today's return. Just 3 minutes away from touchdown in Kazakhstan.
One 1,500 meters altitude.
And now getting reports in from the field that the SAR teams, the search and recovery teams, do have visual of the capsule.
Interference.
Under 2.5 minutes away from touchdown.
Inaudible. Interference inaudible.
And now 1 minute away and counting to the anticipated landing of Scott Kelly, Mikhail Kornienko, and Sergei Volkov. As we're just 15 seconds away, we'll stand by to see if we can get an official confirmation that touchdown has occurred, but should be coming any second now. And again, we're continuing to stand by to get a confirmation, likely from the Russian search and recovery forces, that the capsule has indeed landed. So again, just continuing to stand by. Per the timeline, the capsule should be on the ground, but just waiting for a final confirmation from the search and recovery forces who are converging out there in Kazakhstan around the capsule. The anticipated landing time was 10:25 p.m. Central. Everything following the timeline exactly as they began their return down to Earth this evening. So again, just continuing to stand by for a confirmation from the search and recovery forces who are there converging on site that the capsule is indeed on the ground. Its anticipated landing time of 10:25 p.m. Central.
Search and rescue. Getting ready here.
And we just got our confirmation. The capsule landed at 10:26 p.m. Central Time, 11:26 p.m. Eastern Time. So the one-year crew returning from whence it began in Kazakhstan 340 days ago. Scott Kelly, Mikhail Kornienko back on Earth, along with Sergei Volkov in their Soyuz craft. So a successful landing down there in Kazakhstan. And you can see the center screen of the Russian Mission Control Center, Есть посадка, which roughly translates to "we have a landing." Again, the search and recovery forces reporting the capsule touchdown 10:26 p.m. Central Time, 11:26 p.m. Eastern, returning the one-year crew members Scott Kelly of NASA, Mikhail Kornienko of Roscosmos, along with Sergei Volkov, also a Roscosmos cosmonaut, landing their Soyuz TMA-18M spacecraft successfully in Kazakhstan. At this point, the search and recovery force teams are going to begin landing their helicopters, driving up in their all-terrain vehicles to safe the vehicle, the Soyuz capsule, and then begin extracting the crew members. As mentioned, we should hopefully get some live TV from the landing zone as soon as possible. And as soon as we'll get it, we'll bring it to you here on NASA TV. But the crew members safely down on the steppe of Kazakhstan, for two of them, Scott Kelly, Mikhail Kornienko, after a historic 340 days on board the International Space Station. So again, the landing coming successfully at 10:26 p.m. Central, 11:26 p.m. Eastern. The one-year crew back down on planet Earth. Scott Kelly, Mikhail Kornienko, along with Sergei Volkov. At this point, again, the search and recovery forces moving in on the Russian Mi-8 helicopters as well as all-terrain vehicles. We'll get live TV, live video from the landing site as soon as possible. It is much more difficult during these winter landings as they have to deal with the elements and is sometimes delayed. So as soon as they are able to set up an uplink and get us video from the middle of the Kazakh steppe with, again, keep in mind this is a very, very isolated location. We will be bringing you that video here on NASA TV. We'll hopefully have some videos. They begin to get the crew members out, set them up in the chairs, and begin doing their initial medical checkouts before moving them on to the medical tent.
Moscow Station and Space to Ground 1. Yuri, go ahead.
So again, just continuing to stand by for a few minutes as the search and recovery forces move into position to begin setting up around the crew members at their landing site. Again, that landing coming successfully at 10:26 p.m. Central, 11:26 p.m. Eastern. And again, the live video, which is difficult to get set up there in such an isolated and secluded location, will be coming to us as soon as possible as the search and recovery forces move in to begin extracting the crew. And so getting some updates from the search and recovery forces, letting us know that the module apparently landed vertically. So a stand will be erected around the Soyuz capsule for the various horses to climb up and begin extracting the crew. They'll also be extracting some early return samples, so various biological samples from the crew members themselves that made the trip down. And again, that video from the landing scene hopefully coming soon. Just a reminder, these landings take place in extremely remote locations, done so on purpose, so the spacecraft is landing where there aren't settlements or other humans for hundreds of miles. Things like cell towers not in existence more often than not around these landing zones, so waiting for that uplink of the TV, which should hopefully be coming soon. But first and foremost, the search and recovery forces moving in to begin safing the Soyuz vehicle and begin extracting the crew members, two of which returning after a very lengthy 340 days in space. Scott Kelly and Mikhail Kornienko, a record for flights on board the International Space Station. Scott Kelly returning as the all-time U.S. record holder for time in space. And so, again, just waiting for that video uplink to get realized from the landing site. Fortunately, though, we do have NASA Public Affairs Officer Rob Navius on standby there at the landing zone. He rode out in a helicopter with the search and recovery forces. Rob, we don't have a view of the landing site quite yet, so I was hoping you could paint us a picture with your words of what's taking place down there at the landing zone in Kazakhstan.
You bet, Dan, and good evening to everybody. They did it. They're home after a year in space, and they stuck the landing. The Soyuz TMA-18M is upright. The ladder has been erected around the descent module, and search and recovery and Energia personnel are now working to open up the top hatch of the descent module to begin the extraction of the crew. Typically, for a Soyuz landing where the vehicle is upright, the Soyuz commander, Sergei Volkov, in the center seat, would be extracted first, typically followed by Mikhail Kornienko, the board engineer, on the left side, and then finally Scott Kelly. We'll see how that order goes. It is a very, very calm morning out here in the southern steppe of Kazakhstan. Almost no wind. It was a bullseye touchdown for the year-long crew of Kelly and Kornienko and their Soyuz commander, Sergei Volkov. We're all anxiously awaiting their extraction from the spacecraft. So if you keep me on the line here as you establish a TV picture, we'll be able to describe the action for you.
Yeah, sure thing, Rob. We'll keep you on. How was the flight out there on the Russian helicopters today? Any inclement weather, anything to deal with, or was it smooth sailing?
No, it was all smooth sailing. As you know, we flew from Karaganda to Zhezkazgan on Tuesday to pre-position for search and recovery operations for the crew. We set out very early this morning in one of the first helicopters that was deployed from the Zhezkazgan airport. Thick overcast in Zhezkazgan. It is also thick overcast here at the landing site. We saw the Soyuz gently descending under its orange and white parachute almost from about the 10,000-foot mark until the time it descended into billowy clouds, signaling a homecoming for Kelly, Kornienko, and Volkov.
And so, Rob, as we continue to stand by for that video and for the crew members to begin getting out, why don't you just walk us through, again, what's ahead for these three once they're outside of the Soyuz?
Okay, so, Dan, as you well know from having done this yourself, once the crew is extracted, they'll be put in three. Volkov will be in the middle chair, Kornienko to his left, and Kelly to Volkov's right, the same seating configuration as they had in the descent module for their entry this morning. The three will have an opportunity to get their equilibrium back just a bit. The current plan is for them to be carried into a nearby inflatable medical tent to get out of their Sokol launch and entry suits, to get into more comfortable flight suit clothing, and to begin a series of comprehensive field tests. This will be the first of three such tests over the next 24 hours. The first to take place in that medical tent to test particularly the year-long crew members, but all three crew members will participate in tests that will measure their vision, their balance, their muscle tone, things of that nature, their strength, their nimbleness of their fingers, and then they'll be loaded into three Mi-8 helicopters for about a 35-minute flight back to Zhezkazgan, the staging city, for other activities that will take place there. Additional field tests will be conducted for Scott Kelly in one of our refueling stops back toward Houston with the arrival at Ellington Field about 24 hours from now.
Well, I know there's certainly a lot of excitement here in Houston to get Scott Kelly back. I know his friends and family very excited to see him back home in the U.S. and here in Houston. How's the morale out there among the search and recovery forces? Are they kind of getting caught up in the excitement of this year-long mission as well?
Well, to use the social media term of the day, it's Selfieville out here, with all of the recovery personnel taking pictures of themselves and of each other. A very exuberant mood. However, we're still waiting for that crew to be extracted. That's the main order of the day, is the safe recovery of the crew. The head of Roscosmos, Igor Komarov, is out here. And one very interesting item, a poignant item, if you will. Former cosmonaut Alexander Volkov, a legend in the Russian space annals, is here to greet his son right here at the landing site. He is standing right next to the capsule with other top Roscosmos and Energia personnel. A very proud moment for his legendary career as he greets his son home from another long-duration mission on the International Space Station.
Well, that's certainly going to be a very poignant moment, and we're looking forward to it, Rob. If you want, stick on the line, and once we get this video back, we can rope you back in, and if not, we can... Oh, and Rob, as I speak, we have video, and we have you dead center in it. So hopefully we'll be getting the crew out soon. How are things looking with preparations at the capsule?
The ladder, of course, has been erected. There is a horde of news media personnel surrounding the spacecraft. I believe they're about to hoist Sergei Volkov out of the top hatch of the Soyuz vehicle. This process should take just a few minutes, and if you have video, you'll be seeing right now that Sergei Volkov, the Soyuz commander, having completed his third flight into space, 548 days in space on 3 space flights for Sergei Volkov.
And indeed, we are seeing him come out of the capsule, the Soyuz commander, the first one out, and as Rob was telling us, his father standing there, excited to welcome his son home.
And then they're helping him down this little slide ladder, if you will. He'll be carried into the center seat of the 3 comfortable chairs that are set up in front of the cameras. He'll be getting a very clear view of that. And the recovery personnel is now bringing Sergei Volkov to the center seat. As you know, he was launched back in September with a visiting crew, a Kazakh cosmonaut and a Danish astronaut, who spent a short time aboard the International Space Station.
Careful, please don't stand in front of the camera.
And we see Volkov now in the center seat, the first one successfully removed from the Soyuz capsule. And of course, next up is going to be Scott Kelly and Mikhail Kornienko, the 2 one-year crew members returning after 340 days in space. And so we'll look out for them. So Rob, I want to thank you for calling in, giving us an update. Have a safe flight back to Zhezkazgan and a safe flight back to Houston, and we'll see you here before too long.
All right, Dan, pleasure. I'll stay on the line if you want to come back to me, but it's your broadcast, so have a good one.
So 1 crew member out, Sergei Volkov in his seat, getting the initial medical checkouts now. We'll stand by to see who gets pulled next, either Mikhail Kornienko or Scott Kelly.
Are you ready? Ready.
And Dan, I don't know if I'm still enabled here. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, Rob, we still got you on, so
okay.
feel free to jump in.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Dan. They are in the process of gently hoisting the second of the 3 crew members out of the top of the hatch.
And we're standing by. We can see the crew members back. Any idea who it is yet?
I'm trying to get into position to see. Scott Kelly. Scott Kelly back on Mother Earth after 340 days in space, Dan. Thumbs
And
up.
we got a great view of him now. The folks here in Mission Control Houston letting out a very big cheer. Scott Kelly, as you just said, returned after 340 days in space. NASA's one-year crew member conducted a lot of very important research back down on Mother Earth, back down in Kazakhstan, where he launched from just about 12 months ago.
With the camera. Over here, please.
And so much like Volkov before him, Kelly now being loaded over into his chair.
Dan, I'm going to make my way over to the other side of the chairs here where Scott is.
Everything.
Okay, sounds good, Rob. We'll stand by. We can see the NASA team. You can see Sean Fuller there just behind Scott Kelly. He's the director of all the NASA operations out there in Russia.
Asking everyone to step back. Here goes. We step back. We step back and don't interfere.
And we're seeing a big smile from Scott Kelly there. You can see just to his right, Steve Gilmore, Scott's prime flight surgeon for his year in space. No stranger to cold landings in Kazakhstan. This is his fourth mission, his second landing in a Soyuz. 520 total days in space across his space flight career, 340 days in this historic year in space.
And then Scott just looked at us and said, the air feels great out here. I have no idea why you guys are all bundled up.
With temperatures hovering right around freezing, I imagine you guys are thankful for your jackets, but for somebody who hasn't had the breeze on his face for almost a year, I bet it feels pretty great out there right now. And back over at the capsule, we can see Mikhail Kornienko, the other one-year crew member, outside the capsule getting ready to get carried over as well.
Do you work for Mission Control?
And then Scott Kelly absolutely relishing the fresh air out here in the mid-morning hours here in the southern steppe of Kazakhstan, breathing deeply, enjoying every second of his return to Earth.
And we just saw Mikhail Kornienko go down the slide. He's getting carried over, so he'll be joining you shortly as well. So with that, all three crew members out of the Soyuz capsule safely down there on the steppe in Kazakhstan.
One-year mission, guys. I'm fine. Okay, yes, we covered him up, wrapped him up. How are you?
And so, Rob, now all the initial medical checkouts are about to begin. Is the medical tent set up there on site?
And yes, it is. It's directly behind us, Dan.
Move away.
As is the custom, they will carry each of the crew members one by one. This short distance, it's about a 50-yard haul to carry the crew members into the medical tent, where they will, as I said earlier, have their SOFA launch and entry suits removed, and then have an opportunity to undergo about an hour to an hour and a half worth of field testing, which is the first critical biomedical measurement of all of their biomedical functions. That will be the initial test of their response to a gravity environment for the first time in a year.
While we exercise there on a regular basis. Yeah. Is it the old tradition?
And then very swift work made by the Energia folks. Sergei Volkov, just a few feet away from me. His father is kneeling down right next to him. What a picture that is. Father and son, cosmonaut heritage that has spanned several decades of Russian space history.
Everything as we were taught.
And we just had a great view of that. Saw Scott Kelly with a satellite phone in his hand, assuming making a call to friends and family, eagerly awaiting his return here to Houston, just about 24 hours away or so from now. A lot of smiles from all three crew members now safely out of that Soyuz vehicle.
Well, you see, just let me go to sauna down here and then I can fly again. Alexander, hello. Please pass along our thank you.
Right now we're looking at Mikhail Kornienko and the other crew members, where you can see the various flight surgeons and nurses out there with the search and recovery forces affixing a number of devices just to get those initial medical readings from the crew members.
Would you like to hold an apple? Not to eat one. Well, this is heavy.
So again, there you have it, all three crew members safely out of their Soyuz craft. Mikhail Kornienko there on the left, Sergei Volkov in the center, and on the right, NASA astronaut Scott Kelly back on Earth after 340 days in space. And as we've heard Rob detail, the science gonna pick right back up for these three crew members in just a couple of minutes once they move into the medical tent and begin those field test studies. All three crew members spending about an hour to an hour and a half doing various functional tasks to see how well they're able to perform shortly after being reintroduced into the gravity environment.
Very much everyone who worked hard and helped us. I'm used to more answering questions, question answer session. I can go ahead and ask me questions. I can answer. Yes, they do send apples up there, but very few cucumbers available. So the previous time I asked for cucumbers, and this time for your channel I was taking videos. Actually today, well, actually yesterday. Don't go away. We're going to take a photograph. No, they said wait for the mission control guys. 2 minutes. Let's switch. Everything is normal. All the equipment worked correctly and worked well. They're going to take measurements. Yes.
And Dan, if you're still with me here at the landing site, they will be starting the process of hoisting the crew members one by one to bring them into the nearby medical tent just a moment or two from now. I must tell you, Scott Kelly may be renamed Spaceman Extraordinaire here. He is looking hale and hearty, and even uttered to his lead flight surgeon, Dr. Steve Gilmore, not much different than it was 5 years ago. So good news as the search and recovery forces now lift Sergei Volkov toward the medical tent, and in short order will be followed by both Scott Kelly and Mikhail Kornienko, but a jubilant atmosphere here in south central Kazakhstan with the return of the one-year crew and Sergei Volkov.
And thank you, Rob, and that's great to hear. We saw Volkov make his way off and Kornienko not too far behind him.
Let's move
And there at Scott's front, you can see NASA Chief Astronaut Chris Cassidy there in the black jacket. Just behind him, Joel Montalbano, Deputy Program Manager for the International Space Station. Here another view of Mikhail Kornienko, the Russian cosmonaut who also just wrapped up the year in space along with Scott Kelly, being carried over to the medical tent now. All three crew members will undergo some more medical exams before beginning the field test study. You can see the tent in this view. It's the orange inflatable tent there just on the left side of the camera screen. And here's Scott Kelly making his way over too, as Rob reported, looking quite hale, quite happy to be back on Earth and not at all affected by the cold weather down there in Kazakhstan. Happy to be breathing some fresh air down on Earth after 340 days in space.
Congratulations.
Could you turn it to the capsule? Could you show the capsule? They went to the tent to start working.
And so with that, all three crew members now inside of the medical tent there in Kazakhstan. You can see the search and recovery forces continuing to work on the Soyuz capsule itself. They'll be removing a number of samples, biomedical samples that the crew members collected over their final days on board the International Space Station for the various human research projects that they were involved in, namely Scott Kelly, Mikhail Kornienko for their year-long stay.
And this is increment 4546, correct? So are they eavesdropping? So it's 4345.
So again, NASA's Scott Kelly and the Russian cosmonauts Mikhail Kornienko and Sergei Volkov successfully landed this evening at 10:26 p.m. Central Time. The search and recovery forces on top of the Soyuz, they're going to be passing out samples shortly. The vehicle landed upright, a bullseye right in its landing zone, roughly 87 miles or so southeast of Zhezkazgan in Kazakhstan.
Very good equipment. Our helicopter is over there. Are we broadcasting live to Mission Control? Hello, I'd like to congratulate everyone with the successful completion of the year-long expedition. And I wanted to say, as it has become a tradition, the equipment worked well in automated mode. I would like to express appreciation to the Ministry of Defense and Rosaviatia for the search and rescue mission. The crew members are undergoing all the checkups and all the medical tests. Again, thank you very much and congratulations. Congratulations on the successful completion to our industry, please. First, I wanted to congratulate the cosmonauts and then the employees of RC Energia who created this vehicle. It worked super reliably. The commander is very happy with the equipment, so it inspires confidence in the completion of all the subsequent tasks they can set for us. Thank you.
And so some congratulatory words first off from the head of Roscosmos, Igor Komarov.
Guys, our U.S. colleagues will say something.
Here NASA's Sean Fuller.
Well, good morning. It's great to be here on the steppes of Kazakhstan once again watching the Soyuz landing. The crew's looking great. Sergey, Misha, and Scott, they're looking wonderful. Scott and Misha, of course, completing their 1 year in space, and they're looking good. This is a great step for us forward as a partnership moving ahead to explore beyond low Earth orbit. We're happy to have them on the ground here, looking great. Okay?
Great.
Zheneva Palatka.
And that again, some quick words of congratulations from NASA's Sean Fuller, the director of the Human Spaceflight Program Russia for NASA out there, the prime coordinator of coordination between our two space agencies, responsible for getting many of the NASA folks who are there on the ground right now, all of the medical personnel and others that were responsible for getting Scott Kelly out, conducting all of these medical checks, doing the field tests there on the ground in conjunction with their colleagues from the Russian Space Agency.
And Charlie, we'll see him in Houston.
Best regards to Charlie.
Yes, yes.
I'm gonna see him on 24th.
Right.
He's coming.
Yes, he'll be in the
Congratulations.
24th to 25th. You guys will be both here at Star City for the return ceremony.
Ah, yeah.
And so continuing to get a couple of views of the search and recovery forces there at the landing zone. But for the crew members who are now safely outside of their Soyuz craft, again, the science not done just because they're not in space anymore. All three, but specifically Scott Kelly, Mikhail Kornienko inside the medical tent, getting ready to conduct the field test study, at which point they'll be asked to conduct a series of functional tests and other tasks, things like standing upright, walking around obstacles, even lying down on the ground and being able to get up all on their own. Things that sound fairly simple, but after you've spent 340 days in a microgravity environment, can be a little bit difficult. And understanding that how well the crew members can do these basic tasks, these functional tasks will be very important for influencing what we eventually ask those first explorers of Mars to do in the minutes and hours after they touch down in a gravity environment after being in space for so long. And so those tests beginning very shortly inside the medical tent. For Scott Kelly, he'll do another series of those tests at one of the stops once he is on his way back to Houston, and then once he's right back in Houston as well. And aside from that, several months of data takes are still ahead for all of these crew members. For Scott Kelly in particular, he'll be submitting samples in the next 3 to 6 months for the various human research program studies that he was participating in for his year in space. And for his twin study, as far as a year from now, he will continue to submit samples for study and analysis by the various researchers involved. So again, though the year in space may be back down on Earth, the science just continuing on for the next year or so. The year-long mission, very much a 3-year mission with the data takes taken before flight, during, and after. So a lot of work still ahead for these crew members, but safely down in Kazakhstan this evening.
Yes, I'm going there.
And this was what we were waiting for. We actually have replays now of the Soyuz spacecraft as it was under parachute. This view coming from one of the Russian Mi-8 helicopters, which was circling the landing zone, waiting for the Soyuz craft to descend. And here you can see it. This is a replay from just under an hour ago as the Soyuz spacecraft was descending under parachute. You can see the thick cloud cover in the overcast sky, but a beautiful light. The Soyuz landing just a few hours after sunrise in Kazakhstan. This again a recorded view from one of the Russian search and recovery helicopters. And so at this stage, the Soyuz capsule was well under its main parachute, a massive parachute designed to slow the Soyuz down from a descent rate of 80 meters per second to just 7.2. The parachutes being initially opened at an altitude of about 6.6 miles. You can see the capsule descends upright. Occasionally will land and roll over on its side, but in this case the capsule landed upright. So it made things easy for the search and recovery forces. And again, you can see the thick cloud layer on the lower deck that the Soyuz passed through before its landing. It's actually fairly similar to the landing just 1 year ago in March, when NASA astronaut Butch Wilmore touched down in Kazakhstan through some fairly thick clouds. The search and recovery forces finding the Soyuz today much quicker, though, getting to Kelly, Kornienko, and Volkov in a very expedited fashion. All 3 crew members out of the Soyuz within 30 minutes. So definitely getting some favorable weather. March, usually one of the most dynamic in terms of weather, one of the most difficult when it comes to Soyuz landings, so this definitely a very successful landing today. And so we'll hang on the air for just another minute or two in the chance that they might have gotten video of touchdown. But for now, you can continue to see the search and recovery forces working around the Soyuz craft, some of them, as our public affairs officer, Rob Navius, so eloquently put, it's Selfieville out there in Kazakhstan. All of the excited crew members who are a part of this historic return, making sure to document and celebrate their time out there in Kazakhstan. There you can see a bag coming off, a lot of, again, samples, biological samples, returning with the crew members inside of the Soyuz spacecraft. But a lot of the samples still on board the International Space Station. They'll be coming home in a SpaceX Dragon. And it looks like we are getting another feed. This again, recorded video from those Russian Mi-8 helicopters, which you can get a great view of one right there, that were circling around the landing zone prior to touchdown. There you can see the detached, or the medical tent being set up, and there the parachute which slowed the vehicle during its final descent. And there all of the initial teams already around the capsule.
I think as far as our joint programs are concerned,
and again, this is a view of Igor Komarov, the head of the Russian space agency Roscosmos. There at the landing zone. Right now, though, the 3 crew members inside the medical tent conducting those initial medical checks and getting ready for the field test study. They're going to be loaded up into helicopters within the next hour or so and make their way back to Zhezkazgan, where all of the advanced teams staged out of this morning. And once there, they will load into planes from their respective agencies, say farewell, and go back to home base for Sergei Volkov and Mikhail Kornienko. That's the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center in Star City, Russia. For Scott Kelly, that is, of course, the Johnson Space Center here in Houston, where he's going to be headed and hopefully arriving within the next 24 hours from now. We want to get these crew members back to the various labs as quickly as possible to make sure the data takes, all the medical tests can take place as close to their return to Earth as possible. And so things beginning to wind down there at the landing zone. The crew members inside of the medical tent where they'll be for the next hour or so, conducting those medical tests as well as doing the field test study. The Soyuz craft, which landed successfully at 10:26 p.m. Central Time, 11:26 p.m. Eastern Time, delivering Scott Kelly and Mikhail Kornienko and Sergei Volkov back down to Earth. The vehicle undocked successfully at 7:02 p.m. Central Time while the station was flying just over eastern Mongolia, and then just about a little over 3 hours later was down on the ground in Kazakhstan. For Volkov, that wrapped up 182 days in space, but for Scott Kelly and Mikhail Kornienko, they returned after a record 340 days on board the International Space Station. That's the longest flight in the history of the International Space Station. And of course, the conclusion of the one-year mission. The two engaged in a variety of human research projects designed to better understand how the body reacts and adapts to microgravity for extreme periods in that environment. All of this focused on preparing NASA and preparing the various partners for that journey to Mars. So with that, a successful landing, a successful return for the one-year crew. Before we close with tonight's coverage, we do have a couple of quick programming notes for you. The NASA video file will air on NASA TV at 12:30 a.m. Central, 1:30 a.m. Eastern. That'll have a recap of all of the landing activities as well as potential post-landing activities with potential interviews with Scott Kelly and Mikhail Kornienko. So be sure to tune in if you're staying up late in for that. And then, of course, all eyes now on Scott Kelly's return to Ellington Field here in Houston. That planned right now to occur at around 9:30 p.m. Central Time on Wednesday, March 2nd. The broadcast will begin 15 minutes before wheels down at Ellington at 9:15 p.m. Central, 10:15 p.m. Eastern. Keep in mind that a very tentative time at this point, as a lot needs to happen between now and then with getting the plane off the ground there in Kazakhstan, and at two various stops along the way. So be sure to follow us on social media for the latest times at NASA or at Space Station. You can also, of course, go to our website at nasa.gov for the very latest. So with that, we will go ahead and wrap up our coverage, the successful return, the successful conclusion of a year in space. So be sure to join us tomorrow as we get ready to welcome home Scott Kelly. But for now, for this evening, we will go ahead and sign off. This is Mission Control Houston.